I think that, one of the things that I'm really interested in doing is some of my some of my experiences online have been very nihilistic and hopeless.
Hmm.
And I feel a sort of sense that we've all learned to connect with each other across the world, but we haven't learned to deeply support each other's values. And it's because
Hmm.
we're all connected and all have different values. And I think that there's an opportunity. The upside I see of the combination of crypto and DAOs is creating these small, tight knit groups that can actually support each other's values and choosing technologies that allow that to happen and hopefully positively reinforce each other. So I mean, I think at this point, maybe just diving into the intersection of where we see alignment between crypto
Hmm.
and the Dharma to me is sort of interesting. And
Yes.
for me, it's this idea of a decentralized movement that is iterative and forkable by nature that I see on both sides. So you've got open source technologies that are being developed in a decentralized way in the
Hmm.
crypto space, and sort of an iterative evolutionary game in these crypto ecosystems. And then I also see in the Dharma space a decentralized movement of people who are exploring the frontiers of the Dharma, Buddhist practice, and also the creation of organizations that can be vessels for the Dharma and Buddhist practice. And in a lot of ways, there's, I think, a rejection of authority in both camps, and maybe an evolution of those cultures that is happening in parallel. And the combining thread that I think is really interesting is that in crypto, we're really focused on economic sovereignty, choosing technology that is open source and can be forked and has our values at heart. To me, is part of economic sovereignty and financial sovereignty. And when I think
Hmm.
about Buddhism, I think a lot about sovereignty of the spirit and of the mind. And those are the connective threads that I see between the two movements. I'd be curious,
Hmm.
from your
Hmm.
side of the Dharma DAO looking glass, what do you think, Vince?
Yeah, that's really interesting. Yeah, where and particularly where the overlaps or the
Mm-hmm.
potential alignments. Yeah. Um, in a general way, I do see both of them as being, at least in this current moment and where we are, representing um, a kind of divergence from the status
Mm-hmm.
quo financial economic systems,
Mm-hmm.
and then status quo
Right.
um, kind of view of what we are as human beings and what makes us
Mm-hmm.
happy.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so in that way, they're both kind of rebellious
Right.
uh, ideologies,
Mm-hmm.
or kind of movements.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's still true of Buddhism, although Buddhism has been more integrated and incorporated into the American
Yeah.
culture.
It's been
That's
around for
one thing.
longer also.
It's
So
been around for much
yeah.
longer. Yeah,
Yeah.
true. And for that reason, I think there is a lot more proprietary um, kind of attitudes that I see in the Buddhist world. Like yes,
Yeah.
there are these kind of figures who are kind of iconoclasts
Mm-hmm.
and who kind of break with tradition and do things differently. And that in
Mm-hmm.
some ways, the history of Buddhism is a history of those iconoclasts.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, and
and they've
especially for, oh, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I was going to say,
no,
especially for
please.
us in the West, where Buddhism is a minority religion, as
Sure.
opposed to in Asia, where it may be a majority thing. I think a lot of our listeners may be in the
Yes.
Western Hemisphere. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut
Right.
you off. Go ahead,
No,
Vince.
that's totally true. And that's why I said, like, here, like in this context, it's rebellious,
Mm,
or weird to be like a Buddhist practitioner.
yeah.
But like like you said, in Asia, it would be just normal. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so I think there is, however, more religious hierarchy and more traditional authority stuff I see going on in the Dharma Buddhist
Mm-hmm.
worlds than in the crypto world.
Yeah.
Um, and that said, yeah, I see there is a spirit, very much a spirit in the Buddhist world of open sourcing. I remember when I first started to
Mm-hmm.
engage with like Buddhist texts and meditation manuals and stuff, I'd get all these little tiny books that were self-published by these monasteries in Burma and
Mm-hmm.
Thailand.
Yeah.
and they would always self-publish and share freely all of their like
Mhm.
meditation manuals. And I was like, this is such
Mhm.
great stuff, and it's available freely and it's offered freely with the spirit
Yeah.
of openness. So the
Mhm.
spirit is there, but the actual hierarchies and the proprietary secret teachings, like there's a lot
Mhm.
of stuff, accretion, kind of accretions on the tradition that are not very open at all.
Mhm. Yeah.
So it's kind of a mixed bag for me on that point. Uh, where else is there convergence? I think you're right about sovereignty. I'd use a slightly different frame, but I think it's similar, like liberation.
Mhm.
That there's an interest in the crypto world on a kind of financial and a kind of
Right.
economic liberation from
Totally.
centralized systems.
Systems, money. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And in Buddhism, there's sort of a similar drive to become free, but not of systems, but of the ego, of the self, like
Mhm.
of this kind of mistaken idea of who we are.
Mhm.
So there is a kind of liberation there as well, of like letting go of this old kind of
Mhm.
complex that doesn't serve us anymore, that's
Mhm.
overly centralized and self-referential.
Right.
I think there's some general similarities, yeah, that I see
Yeah.
there.
Yeah, it's sort of interesting to pull that thread of rebellion and
Mm,
evolution, the relationship between generations evolving over time, and the open source nature of technology versus the proprietary nature of technology, and then the free giving of the Dharma. In a lot of
mhm,
ways, to me, is the giving of a value of a public good, something that's
mm,
good for the receiver. And is similar to me as what we see in open source software with the evolution of those networks.